Competition is something that is almost hardwired into our brains. If it's not a caveman hitting another caveman with a stick while competing for food, then maybe it's something like sports competition. And this idea of being able to watch the best of the best of the best competing against each other is understandably really exciting. Now, it's safe to say that whether or not esports count as an actual sport is a pretty debated topic. But if you ask me, they have just as much of a right to call themselves a sport as something like chess. Esports will have immense strategy, often a lot of team play, a ridiculously high amount of skill expression, and while the activity isn't exactly the most athletic in the world, many teams will make sure its players have exercise regimes to keep them in shape. The term esports started to rise in popularity from the early 2000s, but video game tournaments date way back to around the 70s, and continue to evolve for the next 50 years to the point where entire stadiums are filled out, some players get shot to stardom level, and suddenly it's not just a silly video game. It's a silly video game with millions of dollars involved. And because of how easy it is to watch live streams of all sorts of different gaming tournaments, esports have become absolutely huge in some of the most popular online video games. But the question is, why? After all, we can just play these games ourselves and with friends. Why would we need to watch others play? Why should we care about different teams? Why do we love esports? One of the main things that separate esports from playing the game by yourself is the entire community aspect. It's one thing to just play a game on your own, but it's an entirely different experience being in a room with dozens, if not thousands of people who all share the same love and passion for the game with you. Some of the best memories you can make with a game are at events where everybody is either playing the game together, competing in a tournament, or watching professionals play. And this is mainly because of that sense of belonging that comes when being around so many like-minded people, many of which will probably also be rooting for the same team as you. This community aspect can also apply to non-professional tournaments that anybody can sign up for. And in a way, these sort of low-level tournaments have even more of a community feel to them, because of how involved everybody is with the game. Anything from a small local Smash tournament to something like a national university tournament will both inspire this competitive drive, but also feel pretty fun and friendly. Well, most of the time. I recently had the opportunity to go to MSI in London and experience this sort of community atmosphere in person, and as someone who has watched a bunch of Pro League tournaments on Twitch and YouTube, I can confidently say it's nothing like seeing the real thing. Being surrounded by other fans, holding up signs that none of the players would even be able to see, being charged about £8 for a pint, I didn't like that part, and getting to see the team that I've supported for 9 years in person for the first time. Even sat fairly back, the crowds around me were so passionate, cheering at every play their team made, and making friends with all the strangers around them. When I think of esports, one of the first things that comes to mind are all of the insanely hyped moments. Daigo parrying every single hit on a sliver of health to clutch the win, the dozens of Smash plays showcasing their immense skill, Faker's Z outplay, when you're watching a match and are genuinely rooting for one side to win, you're filled with this weird mix of excitement and anxiety. You know that any misstep from your team or outplay by the enemy could result in your team losing. And when neither team is doing a huge amount, that anxiety just builds up. But man, the feeling you get when something good finally happens is just incredible. But it's not just during the games that feel this way. Even while travelling, the hype is building up because of how exciting it is to go to these sort of events, and in its own weird way, that can be just as fun as the actual event. It's pretty difficult to not get in this sort of mindset when you're watching these sort of events. Even when watching a live stream, seeing all of the little pog emotes fly by anytime a player does something cool is pretty infectious and hard to not join in. And when you're at the events, you can literally feel the rumble of people cheering around you. And this excitement doesn't go away for quite a while either. Even after the event, you get to talk about it with all your friends, or even people you met while at the event. Throughout esports history, there have been many teams and players that have grown pretty prominent and become legends within their community. Sometimes these players will be known because of their impressive skill level, or sometimes because of their personality, or often a mix of both. This makes it much more interesting to watch, because when you get invested in these players, you start having a more personal reason for wanting them to win. These are real people, with real emotions, and sometimes seeing them on stage gleaming with happiness after a win, or shedding a tear after a tough defeat, are moments that can really help us connect with them the most. And sometimes these sort of things can inspire real rivalries between players and fans. If there is some sort of history between players, it can really add some spice to the games that they play against each other in. Sometimes it can be because both players are just really similar in skill level, and nobody can really guess who's going to take the win, meaning the games are so much more interesting to watch. But sometimes it can be because of a simple handshake, or lack thereof. Oftentimes, there will be some really prominent personalities in the esports scene. Players who are just really fun to watch or hear from, no matter how they play. There are a lot of instances where a player will retire from the pro scene to become a content creator in some way, and sometimes this will be the best decision that they ever make. But at the same time, there are still tons of personalities that like to stay in the esports scene. And there are loads of storylines for hundreds of players, and the best part is, you can watch it all for free whenever you want. A hard pill to swallow is that, for a lot of games, esports has seen better days. The majority of sports events make a lot of their money through selling off media rights to broadcasters, and this is the big difference between traditional sports and esports. Unless you actually go to the event, you don't really need to pay anything to watch them. The ad revenue from live streams, tickets, and merch sales won't really make much of a dent in the cost of hosting the events. So where does the money come from? Well, usually it's sponsors, and those sponsors haven't really been seeing the best results for a while, and the money they are putting in is going down. On top of this, pro scene viewership has been pretty rocky for a few different games, and there are potentially a few reasons for this. Sometimes it's because the matches have gotten a little stale to watch. Sometimes it's because there are other streamers putting on amazing events that people would rather spend their time watching. And more often, the companies behind the games aren't helping the situations whatsoever with their constant controversies. A pay-per-view model for esports wouldn't go down very well, and honestly, this isn't the answer. I really would hope to see more innovation to try and solidify the future of esports. Maybe adding more reason to watch the events, trying to find sponsors that would better fit their audience, hell, even giving away some freebies for games for Twitch viewers. I can't claim that I'm an expert in the economics of esports, but I do know that there needs to be some sort of change. Esports are something that can really bring a community of gamers together, letting them bond over the love of games, specific players, teams, or generally these amazing hype moments. While there are things that could be improved on, I don't think that anybody wants to see them go anytime soon. We love esports because of the community. We love esports because of the stories. We love esports because of the players. We love esports because, after waiting 9 years, we finally get to see our favourite teams play in person, and after going to a deciding Game 5, this happens. This is why we love esports.